Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. Big John here. Also got the awesome Steve Wild and the mighty Paul Rimmer. Hopefully we're getting Stuart on, but we'll see. We'll see in a minute. With 3 million litres a day water going down the drain, Thames Water has asked for a bailout of 3 billion, which is about...
Wow.
There's been a few bailouts, and we've got an expert on tonight, which is Steve on the water thing, but it's staggering. China and Canada own that water, and they're not bothered about things over here. The infrastructure is rubbish. The Victorian sewers, no matter what, they were good in the beginning. They've run the course, and they need fixing up. And Thames Water are not putting any money into it. Our water prices are going up, and it just recently today, Keir Starmer said that the power and coal, all that is going up, and electricity prices are going up. When before the election, he said they wouldn't, and there won't be no rises. Unfortunately, Great Britain were being took for bloody fools. That's what we are. Anybody who's under Thames Water, I'd just stop paying the bills. I don't normally say this, but I would absolutely stop paying the bills and get involved. There's plenty of kind of protesting. Write to your MP, write to your local councillor, give it everyone, write to your water companies. Honestly, it's unbelievable. And we, the taxpayer, are funding Chinese people and a Canadian retirement fund, did you say, Steve?
It's a pension fund, so they're actually gambling with other people's money.
You couldn't make it up, guys. You really couldn't make it up. It's just shocking. And tonight we're going to discuss one of our policies is bringing power, water and that back under national control. But even so, we've got to make sure it's run properly. We've got to make sure it's managed correctly. As we know, people will just take the pee and they'll just make money off things and stuff like that, all off our backs. And I just can't believe it, me. I'm furious, me. I have to pay water bills, and we use a bit of water because when my mum were here, we used a lot of water. And, like, having to pay all them bills is just, like, unbelievable. We're just being screwed over, guys. There's nothing else you can say that's going to make me think that we're not doing this. We're being screwed over. Paul. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, interesting. Utilities. You got sort of natural monopolies. Only one company can really supply water to one area, and one company supplies electricity to one area and gas supplies. And yet, it used to be highly regulated, highly ordered. Now it's a little bit chaotic because many of these companies were sold on the stock exchange. The government made a fortune, and they used that to cut taxes, really, in the Thatcher era. Now it's coming home to roost because these foreign companies that have bought these utilities eventually just started using them for cash cows, just taking the money out and not putting in sufficient investment. These facilities, all utility facilities, water, electricity, gas, any monopoly requires the infrastructure, huge investment. And it's hard for the government to force these companies to make these massive investments. That's why they're now turning to the government and say, you've got to put the money in. Otherwise, the actual quality of the service will have to be diminished. So it's not good for the consumer because it's not really a free market, is it? You can't have a free market in the provision of water. You can't have a free market in the provision of utilities because it's a service which is necessary, and it's a service which tends towards monopolization. But it's part of the wider trend in the economy of the government getting economic decisions wrong, and it's starting to impact us big style now. You can see this, the low growth in the economy. But how are we going to correct these failings in the utility companies? How are we going to get back control of our water supply, our electricity? And of course, it's all made a lot more difficult with these net zero targets and the impact that's having on the cost of fuel and the provision of fuel. And it's like they're serving other agendas. They're not serving the agenda of the British consumer. And we're being asked simply to fork up more and more money after being promised that these changes would actually reduce the cost of these sort of services. So it's hitting people hard. I mean, we're in this cost of living crisis. The idea that you can now push up water bills, electricity bills, gas bills, at the same time as you're pushing up council tax, the same time inflation is picking up again and the cost of food is going up. It's a lot of pressure on ordinary people. And we're starting to howl because it's really impacting this society now. Steve, what's your opinion?
Yeah, so the problem with privatisation is that its performance isn't in the national interest. It'll always be in the interest of the shareholders. Problem is, when it goes wrong, we bear the brunt of the bill, right? And when it's put into the hands of like Canadian pension funds, there's like an Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth fund that's a part of it. A branch of the Chinese state government is an investor of it. And what seems to have happened is that to keep them happy, they've been giving out dividends, right? But they haven't been investing in the infrastructure because it's not about the national interest. If you look at things like Scottish Water, which remained nationalised, they put in 35% more of investment into infrastructure, and it seems to be doing very well. This bailout that everyone's talking about, this $3 billion bailout, isn't going to touch the sides because this is inevitably a sinking ship. That $3 billion, not only does it go like not to actually improving the infrastructure, it goes to all these administration fees and keeping the shareholders happy. So it's a sinking ship, and it always will be. Now, in 1989, when all of this went privatised, the water companies, they were privatised with zero debt, right? And now over 35 years or so, they've accumulated 19 billion. So if that doesn't say to you that this is a huge mismanagement, then I don't know what is. Like, water's a funny old business, really, because it's a monopoly that doesn't have any competitors. Whereas if you look at things like telecom companies, there's constantly progress, right? Because there's new technology that they have to keep up with. They're constantly trying like new things. Whereas like water companies, you have no choice on your provider. You can't lease the pipes to get water from other companies, right? There's just no choice in the matter. So there's not that competitive field in it. And the thing is, water isn't actually the product, right? So what you're paying for really is the maintenance, the treatment, and the infrastructure. That isn't what they've invested in at all. That's why we have all these sewage problems and stuff. And we have a regulator, right, called Ofwat, right, that now it's been looking into, but again, that's a private regulator, but it is government appointed. It's a funny old business. But they've been doing investigations into all these dividends, right, these payouts of profit that go to the shareholders. And they said, no, we're not doing this much. They looked into it. Thames Water has a parent company, right, called Keble, and its only source of funding is Thames Water. So it's pretty much a money launderer, so that when they look at all of their funding, they can look at it and go, oh, right, they didn't give that much in dividends, though they did. They did it through the parent company. And it's all a massive money scam that we are bearing the brunt of. Because it's funny, really. I think Thames Water loses about a quarter of its water leaks and stuff like that, and it's very, very expensive because they outsource. Like they'll have a team to dig the hole, they'll subcontract a team to fill the hole and then tarmac the hole, and it's just mad, really. But they haven't invested in like new reservoirs since the 90s. So, like I said, none of this is in the national interest. It's in the interest of the shareholders. But as well, the government don't want to touch it, right? Because if they put them under special administration, right, it will be to bail out the debt, right? But what they don't want to do is have investors in the private sector look at what should be a functioning asset and go, they can't even get that right, because then that like foreign investors will then look at like things like our nuclear and stuff like that and go, no, I don't want to invest with them. Look at what they did to water. So they actually don't want to nationalise it. They want to keep it privatised. So funny old business.
That's a scary amount you mentioned there, Steve. 19 billion in debt. Because that is, I mean, the interest on that is going to be huge. When these utility companies were sold off, they were really just prized assets to bring in a lot of instant revenue for the government. It was part of shrinking the state at the time. But the idea that they were sold off to foreign investors is a bit scary, because the foreign investors don't have an interest in maintaining our infrastructure. They're using this to as a cash cow to drain money out of our nation. Now, when everything was deregulated in the 1980s, and then Blair took that even a stage further, and what they did, all the safeguards that were put in place to make sure that our national interest was served. I mean, there was sort of special share options for the government, golden shares. You say that the regulator itself has been privatised now. It was a government regulation. Blair did away with it. Blair pushed it even further. And what he essentially tried to do, whereas the Tory administration under Thatcher were raising huge amounts of money to cut taxes, and that was actually leading to an enterprise culture within Britain and actually attracting a lot of foreign investment into other areas, because low taxation brings in investment and generates investment. Low taxation is a good thing. What Blair did, he took it a step further, and he wanted to internationalise everything in Britain, including our economy. Just not to make it more efficient, not to attract more investment, but simply to denationalize our nation, to make our nation just a space, an economic space in a global order. Blair was a globalist, and this is where it all started to go pear-shaped. Not only did he want to globalize our population by removing its Britishness and bringing in millions upon millions of foreign aliens to replace us and therefore transform the country population-wise, he also wanted to remove any sort of economic control we had over our own nation. And he deregulated everything in the sense that the foreigners could come in and buy up every asset in this country, which they did. Everything was put up for sale and was sold. And the money came in and was just channeled into global funds, So we lost control. Everything became deregulated. Of course, Blair was also involved in the deregulation of our legal system. That's why we have so many refugees now, because he accepted the European Court of Human Rights above British Parliament. He created the Supreme Court above the British Parliament. He surrendered a lot of power at the time to the EU, which we've attempted to get back. How much we've got back, it's still a bit foggy. But all the time, Blair was selling out our nation and handing over our assets, our legal system, even our very space, our very nation, our very people, over to global forces. This was the globalist dream. This was what we're all about. And it was all hidden under different agendas, but these were never debated, this total sellout of Britain. I mean, Thatcher did it on the debate of economic efficiency, And she managed to get growth up. She managed to get investment into this country. She managed to modernise a lot of the infrastructure. But under Blair, we lost control of everything. We lost control. And it no longer, this deregulation was no longer to benefit Britain, but was actually to undermine Britain and sell us out. And to reclaim this now is going to be an almighty task. As you said, Steve, 19 billion of debt. Which government would want that? I mean, they couldn't finance it. They'd have to borrow to probably buy the debt. And then the debt itself without the interest upon interest. So everything is coming to a head in Europe. Everything is coming to a head. All these catastrophic policies of globalization are now coming to a head. I mean, over the last 20 years, the American economy has doubled in size. The European economy is stagnant. The British economy has been stagnant. There's no growth in our economy. And yet the demands upon our economy from the public sector are getting bigger and bigger, and the government can't finance it. That's why we have all this borrowing. Now, in America, they just print dollars to cover the borrowing, and the world has to absorb the dollar. But in Britain, we have to actually finance the debt. We have to pay higher and higher interest payments. And it's not only, as Steve just said, it's not only like government debt, the fiscal issues that we faced on the government purse. It's also in the economic sector. Our companies are heavily geared up. They're heavily indebted. And this is all dependent on future growth in the economy so they can pay off debt through growth. If there's no growth, they've got to pay off the real debt. And who's going to be asked to take up the slack, to finance this crippling burden? They're going to the consumer. They're going to us. They're imposing more and more charges on us, and we can't carry the burden. Something's got to give. Now, this Labour government has got no vision of any way out of this. We need a new vision, and we need it quick. John, what's your vision? You're muted, John. You're muted.
You're mute. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just going to quickly go through our policy. NHP UK believe that gas, water and electricity industries are too big for a fair, competitive free market, which in theory should keep prices down for the public. The nationalisation of these industries will stop their monopolisation by mega rich billionaire companies who do not want to keep the prices down for the public. And we also campaign to nationalise the UK rail system for the same reasons. And if you've been Germany, Holland or France, if you've been to Europe, the train services are a lot better than they are over here. And I've travelled in them places quite a few times. They're a lot better. We've got the worst infrastructure, the worst everything. And like I said now, Keir Starmer is raising the price of our fuel and stuff like that. It's going to go up, even though he said he wouldn't do it. Honestly, I just don't get it, me. How much did he want to screw out the United Kingdom? And even when years ago I used to think to myself, like, everyone's against Britain and they're just taking all the money off us. And I was right 20 years ago thinking that, because that's what they're doing to us now. I mean, Thames Water, I'd take it back. I won't be paying these people. I won't give them any money. I'd just take back control, kick them all out, ban them from having businesses or anything in the UK, get rid of them, and then take it over ourselves. Then obviously we're going to have to put money into it. We're going to have to build it up. We're going to have to work on a lot of the stuff there. But 3 million litres a day, guys, is going down the drains. And we haven't even got to what they're doing to our rivers, the pollution in our rivers. You'll see on TikTok, Fergal Sharkey has been going around testing rivers and stuff like that. They just pollute it all. Honestly, you just couldn't make it up. I just don't get people, me. I really don't get our government, and I don't get why people aren't furious over this. Absolutely furious. Like I said, we take back control. We don't give them any money. We don't buy it back off them. We just take it back off them, and that's what I would do. And I'm sure if Donald Trump were over here, he'd do exactly that. He'd just take it back on them and put the big finger up at them. It's just unbelievable, guys. We need to do something, you know what I mean? We really need to do something. The prices of our fuel are up. And all this is to do with that net bloody zero. That's got a big part in everything to do with our fuel prices, everything. Our utilities over here. It's unbelievable. I just want to big shout out to everyone. I surpassed 4,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm actually 4,250. It's flying up. And thank you to everyone. Please share the videos, like, comment, and stuff like that. Once it's monetized up properly, it'll be money for the NHP UK, because I'm going to link it to our party, and that'll be donations for our party. But please, guys, share me stuff. Everything's on. If you've got any hints or tips or anything on, just let me know. But thank you very much. 4,250 subscribers, and it's awesome, and the channel's flying up. But good evening in the chat, Mark Williams. I was spent a day on Sunday with Mark, first time meeting him. We're in rugby, helping Lloyd out, doing some leafleting within the weather range we could. But yeah, it was a lovely day and a lovely afternoon. So God bless you, Mark, and hopefully I'll be seeing you again. But take it easy, everyone, please. Be safe and all that. And please, again, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Go through our videos and stuff like that. Comment and stuff and share our stuff. But getting back to that water, I'm furious, Paul. I was furious when some weeks ago it came in the news. A few months ago, it was before Christmas, when it come in the news about Thames Water. And a lot of people have known this for a long time. Our government, unfortunately, how do I say this without... Our government are pussies, really. Anybody in the world can do anything to our government, and they just bend over and put right down. I'll tell you what, if I were Prime Minister, there'd be serious changes like Donald Trump's doing now. And I won't be taking any prisoners either. Like I said, that water company, I'll just take it off and I won't be buying it back off them, I'll tell you that. And big finger up to them shareholders in China and in Canada. A big shit. Also in the news, they're saying that 500 million of that is going, just under 500 million is going, will be used for interest payments and costs for new creditors. And that's like nothing to do with fixing the water. It's not. 500 million isn't going to be doing any on any sewers. So the money is just going to people. And like Paul said, it's a money laundering scam. And they're ripping us off mega. I can't see them lasting much longer. Unfortunately, we haven't got the people in Parliament with the Billy Big Balls to do anything about it. We haven't. Keir Starmer is just a bend over and you can do me up the backside to any kind of country, any kind of person, any foreign investor or anything like that. And the police, Great Manchester Police, give a woman a visit the other day. And let me just say, them people involved in that WhatsApp group, they should be jailed, convicted of a crime, and never able to hold public office again. And I'm telling you that, GMP, so you can come round my house, see what I think. But that's what should be happening to them people. But unfortunately, nobody in our country has a big enough pair of balls to do anything, Paul and Steve. They don't. You know, like I said, Keir Starmer must be bent over his desk every day, being shafted up the backside by all these foreign investors, Zelensky, the EU, all the globalists and all that lot. They must be absolutely loving that backside of Keir Starmer. Fucking hell. Over to you.
I think, John, that the calibre of the MPs in Parliament is absolutely shocking. This is why I've got little confidence in the future. But I want to ask Steve, how does he see this developing in the future? How are we going to resolve this?
Well, first of all, nationalisation is an inevitability, right? If you look at this from a business head, it is totally unsustainable. Even the shareholders themselves have called it uninvestable, right? So that then sends out a big message to all the other global financiers and stuff: do not touch this, right? And people won't. So when they're putting these bills up, these 53% increase on your bills and stuff, it's not even for the infrastructure, it's to cover the debt. So the service isn't getting any better. And England and Wales is pretty much one of the only nations that does this, and has a privatised water system. The rest of the world doesn't do this, and it's very evident it hasn't worked out very well, has it? Like when John was talking earlier about the sewage problem, stuff like that, he mentioned about the old sort of Victorian systems. Well, I mean, when he was talking about the trains and stuff in other nations being better, they're cleaner and stuff, but they're also working on these really old Victorian systems. They need to be updated. So do our sewage systems. Problem is, with like Labour governments that constantly talk about net zero and environmental issues, right? This is why they don't want to touch the water, because there's so much to clean up. You've even got people in like wealthy areas now that have been told by their water board to stop doing boat races. Don't even get in the water, right? Don't go for a swim, because funnily enough, a lot of this actually came out during lockdown when people were getting into things like cold water plunging and stuff, and people were getting ill, like really, really, really sick from the water, which wasn't happening sort of 15 years ago. So they're not maintaining the infrastructure. What's funny about this is most of their fines are coming from environmental agencies and stuff. So for a government that is so pro environmental issues, they've got a big old mess to deal with when this happens. Because what will inevitably happen is that they'll have to go into like a special administration, right, so that the debt can be cleared. Where it goes from there, I think they're going to want to put it back into privatization, but no investors are going to want to touch it, right? So maybe it will have to go into the public sector, which I think it would. But for that to happen, there'll have to be a big restructure. So, for example, for that to happen, we're going to need a committee. You're going to need a committee of experts, water scientists, engineers, people that have worked in the industry and know how to sort out the infrastructure. Right? These are the people that you may have to do an in-house vote within the water board or something like that. So there will be a lot of structural problems to deal with if you're going to take it into the public sector. But that's nothing that isn't fixable. But for the Labour government to constantly talk about environmental issues and not want to touch the water companies because everyone's swimming in shit, excuse my French, like, this is unsustainable. It's inevitable. It has to be renationalised. This is the
problem is, Steve,
water board in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you said something really interesting initially there, that these charges which are being increased are not to improve the quality of the service. They're simply to cover the interest on the debt or the payments that are being made for dividends. This money is not being invested or used productively. It's simply being taken from us and it's being drained away. It's like pouring water into sand. Now, it's the same with the council tax. They're putting up the council tax all over the country, 10%. The council tax has doubled over the last 10 years. It's absolutely horrendous. This is another heavy tax on the working poor. Now, what's happening to all this money that they're raising in council tax? The extra money. Is it going to improve services? No. It's going to finance their pension payments. They have huge pension liabilities, and that's why they're imposing these council. This is why all these councils are going bankrupt now. I mean, it's a product of woke politics because they equalise pay between men and women regardless of what they did. And they've equalised the pensions. It's putting a huge liability on the councils. And the only way they can finance this is passing it on to the taxpayer. So we're paying more for our water supply, for our utility bills, for our council tax. We're paying more in national insurance, but it's not for any improvement in service. You know, if you're paying more for something in the private sector, you'd expect a better product. But there's no better product here. It's actually just paying to keep the whole thing going before it collapses because the liabilities are so great. Now, this is catastrophic. Catastrophic in the short term, not even in the medium term. And yet, the people who run this country, the civil service, the MPs, the political class, they're not up to the job. They haven't either got the vision or expertise to resolve any of these issues. So Rachel from Accounts, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, she's asking people, have you got any idea how to raise growth in the economy? Please let me know on the back of an envelope. I mean, she's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. She controls the monetary policies of this country, the fiscal policies, how much the government taxes us, what they do with that money. She's in control, and she hasn't got a clue. The people who are running the ship don't know how to steer the ship, and we're heading for the rocks. Now, thankfully, we've got a party, the National Housing Party, which has the expertise to save this nation, we hope, but we might need some help along the way there. But you've got to have a vision. I mean, this is the thing about Donald Trump. He's only been in power 36 days. It seems like every day it's another revolution because he's got a vision of the changes he wants to see, and he's making them happen. You've got to get the right people on board, but you've got to have a vision. The only vision of this Labour government is to keep their mates happy, to pay off their supporters, you know, to give the big wage rises as they've done to the teachers and people. The health, the NHS, that's another walking catastrophe. The NHS, which just absorbs trillions of pounds, and provides an ever worsening service. There's something rotten in the state of Denmark, and we've allowed it to go on far too long and this is the essence of the problem. The people who run this country, the political class, and now the politicised civil service, they're not there to represent the British people or to look after our interests. They're there serving other gods, and that's all they're interested in. And they've let the good ship Britannia hit the rocks, and it's starting to sink. And listen, guys, whether you like it or not, I'm talking to the people now, the British public. We've got to rise up because this is our future. This is our future that's being taken from us. And it's not only being taken from us demographically through mass immigration, our own replacement in our own country. It's not only being taken off us in the fact we're being made illegitimate because of changes of law and these universal human rights given British privileges to the whole world. It's crazy. It's not only is our future being robbed from us by poor economic decisions and poor decisions about the economy, as we're seeing with these water industries. It's our future's being taken off us because we don't have the representatives to act on our behalf. This is why we're going to have to rebel, guys. We're going to have to kick out the Lib Lab con. And we've got Reform, we've got the National Housing Party, we've got movements, radical movements, which we too can do what Donald Trump is doing. We can create a revolution in this country, and we need the revolution. For too long, people have felt, let's just keep the status quo going. Soon, the status quo won't be an option because it stinks and it's getting worse and worse. So we've got to wake up, guys. We've got to form our legions, and we've got to get involved and make our voices heard again. Overthrow this political class, overthrow the civil service, and bring in a patriotic political movement in this country, which is going to look after this country again. John?
Yeah, definitely. Just a big shout out to TKE Media in the chat there. Tony, I think his first name is. Lovely lad. Does a lot of streaming around Manchester and that. Definitely a good soul. Definitely worthy a follow if you're on YouTube. So that's TKA Media there. You'll never win an election if you're against the NHS. Well, it's not so much we're against the NHS. We just want it reforming. We want it better. And remember, a lot of our services came into being to support people while they were working and stuff like that. But now we have, in England, we've got 50% of the Pakistani population still marry the first cousins. I don't need to explain any more than that. Oldham is one of the worst areas in the UK for it. So we have the biggest social care system for kids and adults in the country. And one of the reasons is because of that. So things need to be sorted out. And in the NHS, it's badly managed. We talked about this before, box tickers. You know what I mean? They're spending £100,000 a year on a diversity officer for some hospital somewhere. But every hospital has got a diversity officer. They have a diversity lead. There's a list. There's about 6 people who are diversity something or other, and that isn't saving any lives. That isn't making people feel better. That isn't healing any bones. That's not making people not sick. That's not doing any operations. That's diversity officer. We could start with getting rid of all them straight away, and how many hundreds of thousands of pounds would we save? But there's many things to go across. But no, you've got a good point, Tony. You've certainly got a good point. But yeah, we've got to take back Thames Water. And honestly, I'm not normally one to say this, but I would be boycotting water if I could. I would be. And, you know, it's got to be done. We've got to put pressure on the government. We've got to put pressure on our MPs and councillors to get something sorted out for this. Take back Thames Water, and we don't pay them for it. We just take it. We tax it. We do the thing that the gangsters set, and we go and tax it back off them. That's what we do. That's what we should do. It's simple as. And you know, I'm not having it any other way, me. But the amount of money. But this isn't the first time they've been bailed out, is it, Steve?
No, it certainly isn't. When it comes to like not paying and stuff, this is why they started installing meters and they put in metering contracts and stuff, because I think about 15% of their water is lost through what's called unmetered usage. So like for all the water company knows, there could be a geezer with dolphins and they just wouldn't know. They just wouldn't know about it. So but the problem with that is that the infrastructure hasn't been rebuilt. What they do now is they put in like blue poly pipe, whereas before it's like lead. The longer you leave that, that's not very good for you, right? So I would suggest getting lead replaced if you can. It's not the first time they've been bailed out, but like I said before, it's not a bailout to help us. It's a bailout to help the shareholders. It's a bailout to keep the investment afloat, and it is a sinking ship. I think it's absolutely inevitable that it'll end up in the public sector. How long it will take, I'm not sure. But this $3 billion, it's only going to last until October, if that. You know what I mean? It's funny, really, when you talk about the NHS. Right? When you look at the left, they idolise it. Like it's like NHS idolatry. I often say it's like the way they look at the country. It's like it's a health service with a country attached to it. That's the way they like look at the NHS. It's like it's the best thing. It's not really. What they've done is they've used essentially a service that is absolutely necessary, right? And we need it. No matter how poorly it is ever run, they will always back it for political gain because no one wants to see people die. It's quite insidious to use the NHS and stuff, but all of the bailouts and stuff, particularly with look at when
you're breaking up there, Steve. You're breaking up. Don't know what's happened there. I'll just pick up. He's frozen. You froze, Steve. Getting back to the NHS, the National Homicide Service. It's, you know, it's now, we call it the International Health Service now. It's staffed by foreigners. It's, you know, most of the patients. You go into accident and emergency, you have to wait 15 hours now behind people from all over the globe. It's shocking, you know. But beyond that, you've got this issue of fraud. You've got the issue of waste and abuse, which are going on in these public services. I mean, John highlighted these DEI officers all being paid six-figure salaries for nonsense on stilts. But everything is nonsense. These institutions now are so bizarre. This is what Trump is exposing in America. These people have been milking the public purse to promote hideous agendas. I mean, the NHS is at the cutting edge of transgenderism. The NHS is at the cutting edge of mass abortion. The NHS is at the cutting edge of all these vaccines which have caused so much damage. The NHS is no saint. And I think the British people have to wake up to this. The people who run the National Health Service now, and the purposes it's run for, is not what it was like in the 1970s. I mean, go and try and get a dentist now. I mean, the dentists have been taken outside the NHS, and it's really, I haven't got a dentist because I go there and say, oh, we're full up, and I go in there and it's like half of Iran is in front of me or half of Pakistan. I wonder, where am I, you know? I just want an English dentist. You don't get English dentists. I wouldn't go to a hospital now. It's years since being going to a hospital. I got called in to see my GP a couple of years ago, and she was a small Pakistani woman. I couldn't understand the word she was saying. I mean, what's that about healthcare? In the end, I just said thank you and left. But it's all absurd. The people who think the NHS is this marvelous light upon the hill, this wonderful institution looking after the health of the nation, it's long since moved on from that. It's now a very sinister organization which is pushing an agenda. And that agenda is the woke communist agenda. And that's what Trump's exposing in America. If you knew where the NHS spends its $250 billion every single year on, you'd be shocked. Because most of it goes on waste, goes on DEI, and it goes on fraud. There's rampant fraud. It's badly managed, awfully managed. And all this, again, points back to the politicians and the civil service. This is the problem in this country now. The civil service is not what we thought it was in the 1970s. They're all woke now. And the civil service is staffed by foreigners as much as the NHS is. They're not serving the British people. They're pushing agendas. And these agendas are contrary to our interests. That's why we'll never escape it through the Lib Lab Con. Because they are servants. Like it was just seen in Germany, the Conservatives get elected, and what do? They form an alliance with the German Socialists, German Labour. And that's what would happen in this country. We need radical new forces. I mean, we've got Reform, we've got the NHP UK, we've got new voices. We are the media now. We've got to get in there and challenge these people that are established, challenge those who are in control, and overthrow them. Otherwise, we're going into the dung heap because these people are not working in our interest. Steve, are you back online?
I think so, mate. Can you hear me? I don't really know what happened there.
So, Steve, you said, how long will this $3 billion last, did you say? Till
about October, if you look at it financially, yeah. But that won't improve any infrastructure. It won't improve any sewage in the water. It is literally to keep the investors happy, not the people.
I do think that we are going to take back Thames Water eventually, soon. I do think some things are going to get renationalised, hopefully. I'm not sure what Reform are going to do. They're going to sell them off or anything. But when they sold it off, there must be like paperwork and an agreement. So what did they write in? Oh, we'll sell it to you. But, you know, like you would think that like so much money has to go on the infrastructure. You've got to sort out our pipes. I think we just signed it over to them, whoever was being bummed at the time, and just signed it over with no T's and C's or anything at the bottom. They must have done.
Well, at the time, John, there was a lot of regulation initially, but this has been reduced over time. And what's that meant long term is that more and more power has gone to the actual water companies. They've been given a free hand eventually. The regulation was stripped away. Tony Blair stripped a lot of the regulation away. He went a step too far to bring in these Chinese investors without thinking that these people ultimately just want to milk this as a cash cow, get the money out of it, and just provide minimal service. They weren't committed to improving the service. Now, nationalisation could be a cure if you had a decent government and decent people in charge of the government. But, it's, at the moment, I don't think, what would happen probably is that the government would take control of it. It would actually probably get worse. And the government wouldn't provide the money required for future investment. The government itself is broke. All this government seems to now believe in is pushing up taxes. And that's counterproductive, because the more you tax people, the more you tax industry and enterprise, the less enterprise you get, the less investment you get. And actually the growth just dries up, and there's less money. Taxation leads to economic stagnation. Look at Ireland, right? Ireland cut its profit tax, the corporation tax on companies. It cut it from 28% to 14%. And all the companies just moved to Dublin. Ireland has raked in billions doing that. And we was following suit for a while, but then we reversed gear and started putting the corporation tax up again. Rachel from Accounts, who's taken over the our national economy, she's pushing up everything. Corporation tax is going to go up. National insurance is going up. This is going to hit small businesses. So pubs, they're expecting 20,000 new pubs to close in the year ahead. Taxes, taxes, taxes on small businesses, on independent workers. They're taxing anything that moves. It's a terrible agenda this Labour government has got, and it's hurting us hard. And now we're seeing that not only is the amount of foreign capital drying up in this country, people are leaving this country now. Millionaires, rich people, investors, businessmen, they're bailing out of Britain. They're getting their investments out of Britain quickly before they're taxed to death. Now we're looking at the farmers, what they're about to face. They're going to face all sorts of new taxes, inheritance taxes, which is going to cripple farming in this country. They're already talking about tens of thousands of farmers are simply going to have to walk away from their land because they can't afford these new taxes. It's sad, really, what they're doing. It's very, very sad. They're destroying what is worthy and what is left in Britain. What is left in Britain? We've seen so much industry go overseas. We've seen so much of the industry here now under foreign ownership. And yet this is a country which has got incredible quality. We've still got a fine sort of education institutions. Oxford and Cambridge are still two of the top universities in the world. We've still got a lot of innovation and technology, which we could actually promote. Look at the Premier League, how successful they've been. There are so many good things about this country. It's still, the British people are very creative, very dynamic, and we have shown in the past that we can win economically. We can perform on the world stage, but we need the right policies. We need to get taxation down. We've got to stop taxing enterprise in this country. We need to get income tax down, national insurance down, corporation tax down. If we did that, it would attract investment. It would create more opportunities for everybody. This Labour government, it's all about bureaucracy, building up the bureaucracy. As Donald Trump in America is taking on the bureaucracy, these public officials who are just milking the system to benefit themselves. I mean, you said last time on air, John, and this was really important, we should stop paying these MPs. And there's a lot of reality in that, because these MPs now think their job, and that's all they call it now, a job, is just to enrich themselves. They think it's like a business, and they want to come out of being an MP a lot richer than when they started. They're not there to save us. They've got no vision for the country. They're just milking the system for as what they can get out of it. The calibre of this Labour government and its MPs, all these silly women, they call them jelly babies. It's below pathetic. It is really awful. And all they're doing now is trying to get themselves little sinecures, little appointments, which will maximise their salary. They'll be milking the expenses for every penny they can. I mean, I remember when I stood against Jane Kennedy in Liverpool as police commissioner, and I found out that every day she claimed the maximum expenses every single day. It doesn't matter where she was or what she was doing, she would claim the maximum expenses. And this is what these MPs are doing. They're just milking the system. They're just using the system to enrich themselves. They're like benefit cheats, you know. This is absolutely absurd. That's all they are, really, because they don't provide. I mean, they don't represent their constituents. They're not really interested in the British people. They're being ruled by a group of thieves and fools. But Donald Trump, he's taking them on in America. He's taking on this bureaucratic political elite, and he's attacking them. And they're trying to defend themselves as much as they can, but he's on the offensive. There's a revolution there. And the revolution, when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches cold. It will come here. It will come here. And this system that they built, this globalist system, where everyone is milking the ordinary people, that's going to be finished now. You know, they say you will own nothing and be happy. No, we want to own our nation. We want to own our own lives. We want to own our inheritance and our nation, our heritage. And we've got to rebel against this. And America's leading the way. Donald Trump is showing what can be done. And Donald Trump is not going to be chained back. He's not going to be held back. And the worst thing about these people, they portray themselves, the Labour Party, as a party of do-gooders. But the way they want to get out of this mess is to have a war with Russia, a big war. And then they can milk us even further, and they can hide everything under a war. They've done that in the past, you know, and this is how sad these people are. This is how abusive these people are. We don't want war with Russia. Russia's not our enemy. This dispute over the east of Ukraine, it's between Ukraine and Russia. It's not our fight. There's nothing to do with us. And Starmer's made a big speech today that he's going to increase defence spending by 500 billion or something. It's absurd. We've got no money. We've got no industry. We've got rid of the steel industry. We've got rid of all the armament industries. They generate too much carbon. We've got rid of the coal-fired power stations. We haven't got the cheap energy to manufacture this stuff. Everything they've done has gone in the wrong direction, and it's gone on too long, and it disguised it. And the media, whose responsibility is to expose this, are being bought as well. We found this in America. When Donald Trump stopped this USAID, he found out the Biden government was paying all these left-wing media outlets. They were all bought and paid for. Pick up a newspaper now in Britain, it's just garbage. It's government propaganda. People aren't buying it anymore. We're online. We've got the public voice, the Vox Populi. We're speaking out, and we're in rebellion. And I tell you what, the Liblab Con is very shortly going to be kicked into touch and forgotten. John?
There will be. We're talking about expenses in the news today. £521,527 on David Lammy's office already spent on restaurants and drink and stuff like that, and tea and coffee at expensive places. And they've been in power since July, guys. Or whatever it were. Yeah, July. They've been in power since July. £500,000 that guy's cost us. He's just taking the mickey. He's just screwing us over like the rest of the members of Parliament. Thoughts on a sin tax, Tony? You know, we're already taxed tobacco, alcohol, and I know that we've got a sugar tax as well. Sugar's been like taxed as well because that's bad for us. You know, good thing. It'd probably be a good thing in the future if we became in power, because I'd want to look at stuff like that, so we wouldn't be smoking and drinking and stuff like that. I'd look at it definitely, but it's something to think about. But thank you for joining us, Tony, and thank you to everyone else in the chat. Again, thank you very much for sharing me stuff and commenting. I'm 4,250 subscribers. I've gone up like 500 in a month, which is awesome, and I'm going to keep on it as well. But again, please spend a little time on my YouTube and looking at our other platforms as well, especially X, and join us on there. Get more involved, get commenting, share me stuff and all that. But thank you to Steve and Paul. Steve must have technical issues, but Steve's a waterman, and you heard the stuff he was saying. 19 billion we've bailed them out for so far. It's unbelievable, guys. We can't keep this up. We need to take back Thames Water. Thank you, everyone in the stream. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. God bless.
God bless, guys. Take care.